Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Country Education Partnership Free Professional Development Series. My name is Brendan Ryan. Country Education Partnership acknowledges the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which our schools, our families, and our communities work and play. We pay our respects to elders of the past, the present, and those that will lead us to our collective future. So welcome everybody to today's session, the first session in a series of 4 winter series. And the topic for today is women in leadership. And we have some very distinguished guests to speak about the topic today. Before we move into today's topic, I'll introduce the Chief Executive Officer of the Country Education Partnership, Mark McClay, who will provide an update regarding CEP activities. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Brendan. And here at CEP, we're very excited about today's episode, the first of our winter series, but also the next 3 for this series we're really looking forward to. We have reverted to a special time of 2 p.m. today. I know many of you will be watching the recording, and there is a reason for the special time, and we'll go into that as we go. One upcoming event that I just wanted to highlight with CEP is we are hosting a small schools forum. It's a hybrid model that will be beamed into all 7 regional centres of the Academy, Victorian Academy for Teaching and Leadership. So we're really excited. This is the first of its kind. Only 129 registrations, and it's growing every day. Cross-sectorial, so we've got principals from and teachers and from both settings, but also we have a range of other participants joining in. I know Vic SOC and different department staff are joining in, so we're really excited to bring you that. We've just been finalising the agenda for that session, so that's really exciting. That is on Thursday, June 20, and there's still time to register for that via our socials. So that's our most current news that I wanted to bring, but I don't want to take away any more time from today's exciting session. Back to you, Brendan.
Thanks very much, Mark. Our normal housekeeping procedures apply. The session will take exactly 1 hour, so we'll be finished by 3 p.m. The program is being recorded, so there will be an opportunity to review the session online. And I make the point that all past sessions are also available online. If any of the participants has a question, please include your questions in the chat box, and we will endeavour to respond to those questions today. Otherwise, we'll get back to you during the next week. Before we conclude the session, we ask everybody to complete a survey. The survey will also appear in the chat box and come online. So please make sure you complete the survey before tuning out today. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our Program Manager, Morris Billy, who will introduce our guests and facilitate today's session. Over to you, Morris.
Thanks, Brendan, and thanks everybody for being here today, and very excited to kick off our winter series with this particular episode looking at women in leadership. And we've got 3 wonderful presenters for you today. And if I'm not mistaken, we might have our first international presenter as part of the lineup today. So we've got 3 wonderful speakers today that we're going to hear from. Jill Benoit from Canada, who's an administrator. All our presenters have a background in education. We've got Liesbeth Long, who's with the Goldfields Shire Council. And we've also got Sally Klinge, who's principal at Dimboola Memorial Secondary College. So it's fantastic to have those 3 people with us today. And the focus, as I said, is women in leadership, but strongly connected to their journey in education. As part of their presentations, we're going to find out a bit about their background, some of their current work, some of their thoughts and feelings about education more broadly, some key messages for people starting out on their leadership journey, and some reflections based on the benefit of hindsight that they've experienced previously. As I was starting off today, I was thinking about one of the women in leadership that I most admire, and that was the Honourable Julia Gillard, former Prime Minister in Australia, who had a wonderful passion for education, but particularly girls' education in this country. And one of her quotes around educating the world's poorest girls can only be done with the firm commitment of many stakeholders, both domestic and international, to plan, fund and build strong, sustainable and equitable education systems. And I think we can all agree that that's a very strong message from the former Prime Minister. But without further ado, I think we're going to start off internationally, and I'm going to welcome Jill Benoit, all the way from Canada. Jill, it's lovely to have you with us today, and for staying up so late, and welcome to our podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm going to use some notes because it is rather late here, so my brain is probably a little tired. So first of all, I'd like to thank Mark for seeing me somewhere in the online world and reaching out and seeing some value that I might add to this winter series. It's amazing the power of social media, and I am truly honored. And I truly just want to get my message out there in the world to anyone in any profession, teachers, administrators, or any other profession. So first of all, I'd like to introduce myself. As you said, my name is Jill Benoit, and I am literally from the other side of the world. I live in an island called Newfoundland, and it's in Canada. So we have something in common, but it's a small island compared to Australia. Our island is only about 108 square kilometers, and I think yours is like 7 million something. So tiny in comparison to Australia, but something in common with our unique culture and Indigenous peoples and small rural schools as well. I spent 30 years in education. I'm actually retired. 8 of them as assistant principal at a primary school, and at our primary school, it was kindergarten to grade 3, and we had about 350 students, give or take. It was a transient community. And the year I retired, I was assistant principal and teacher librarian. And I spent the last few years of my career transforming our library into a learning commons in our school. And I spent all of my career, except for 1 or 2 years that I remember, teaching in multiple positions. So like half teacher librarian, half assistant principal. I might have been a quarter-time French, music, tech. There was a bunch of things. And as we know, when you have a mix-up of all of those parts of jobs, it's actually like having 3 or 4 full-time jobs. I started out teaching music and French. That's my specialty. And I taught everything in between up to grade 8. And the last 8 years of my life in administration were stressful. I really, really enjoyed my job. But of course, as an administrator, we know it comes with some stress. And then to throw COVID in on top of that, I ended my career in 2022. And I do have 2 adult children. They're 25 and 27. And they're out there trying to make their own way in the world. So, as I said, I'm retired from full-time teaching, but I have been substituting. I'm not sure what you call it, supply teaching or substituting. And it has been an absolute joy, a totally different perspective. I get to see all the kids that I taught from primary school right up to grade 12. And I'm also surprised, and I think this has come through my my growth in the past couple of years. I'm surprised that I enjoy teaching the high school and the middle school kids, which is very surprising. But that came through a lot of working on myself. Since I retired, I became a certified personal trainer. I became a certified nutritionist and health and wellness coach after I fell in love with taking care of myself and learning so much from the trainers that I work under. And they inspired me. And I want to share that with the world. And I especially want to share it with teachers and administrators. But I'll never forget the light bulb moment. We were having a professional development day at our school. And as administrators, we decided to invite the health and wellness representative in from our union to do a little talk for an hour because we could see that a lot of our staff members were having some issues. They needed some wellness. Now, as we know, an hour is not going to solve all the problems, but it was a trigger for me. As she stood up there and she talked to the teachers, and I was kind of in the background, I was filling up and I was biting my lip, holding back the tears. She had this chart on the screen and she was talking about the signs of burnout, stress, overwork, and I had all the signs. I could feel these signs for years, but didn't take time to listen to them. I felt guilty for feeling them. I felt like I should be stronger than that. And I was so deeply immersed in trying to do everything and be everything for everybody, for the school, my family, my community, not asking for any help. But I was getting close to retirement, and I knew that the way things were going, I was either going to have maybe a nervous breakdown or something like that, or I would be quitting. I'd slowly gain weight. I was pre-diabetic. And I knew that if I kept on this path after 30 years, what would be my reward? Aches and pains, joint issues, diabetic meds, not enjoying the life I deserved after pouring myself into a job that long. I needed to make a change right then and there. You need to have work-life balance. It's a real thing. And there is a way to do this because I did it. Well, that's what I told myself. I need to make a change. But then COVID came and things took a big turn for the worse. I couldn't do all the things that were so joyful for me in education, like the assemblies, the special projects, the concerts. And 2 years before that, I'm going to backtrack a little tiny bit because I think we need to understand about trauma and how things build up for us. 2 years before that, my husband suffered a heart attack while my son was being diagnosed with Crohn's and my daughter was leaving for university. So many life changes. And I was in administration trying to hold it all together. So at that time, I visited my doctor. I said, I got to do something. So she prescribed medication to take the edge off of life. And again, 2 years later, we were in the midst of COVID. But we don't realize that all of those changes are traumatic events in our lives. And if we don't deal with the trauma in some way, we'll break. We still try to hold things together. And in 2020, I was breaking bad. Now, bear with me because I know this is a lot of a background, but it all ties together. I'll never forget the day I was in my family room downstairs. I was sitting on the couch eating a box of crackers right out of the box. And I said, I'm done. I'm either done with life or have to make a change. If I don't, I won't see the end of my career. I wanted to be ready for retirement. So I made a decision that day. And it was as simple as that. It was a moment. And I signed up for this online workout platform that I had no idea about, that had an amazing community, supportive community, and I haven't looked back. I didn't realize what I was getting into because I signed up as a coach and I had no idea what I was doing. But I started working out and focusing on my nutrition. And that's what I'm doing, and that's what I'm continuing to do. Through lots of personal growth, books, sessions, courses, and consistently working out and eating healthy, I began to feel amazing. I even started getting up at 5 a.m. and working out before work, and the difference it made in my day was insurmountable. I knew that after my workout was done, I could tackle anything that came my way at work. You're better for everyone around you. So instead of entering the building with dread, but still smiling, I entered with confidence and an energy that people sensed. Now, don't get me wrong, I never ever entered the building without a smile on my face. And I gave 100% and did whatever I could for anyone. But I was coming apart at the seams. So I guess my key message for anyone starting a leadership journey is that you have to put yourself first. And this is a hard thing to do because we come with all these preconceived notions and thoughts that are put there generations back. But we need to start making small changes to our daily routines because it's a journey. And I'm still learning and it's still unfolding. A morning routine for me is like non-negotiable. It's a golden ticket, I call it, because it starts my day with energy, enthusiasm, and confidence. Taking that time before the day starts and all the noise gets in the way is amazing. I found that when I started working out, I came home from work and it was a push to get going. It was hard to get through. The mental strength wasn't there. So switching over to the mornings was a game changer. And get rid of the guilty feeling you have about that. We have to take care of our minds and bodies first. When you start feeling good about yourself, you can do amazing things. Doing this builds up such a mental strength and a resilience that is hard to explain. And we have to work on these things. We don't automatically come equipped with all of that, even though our ego thinks we do. So I work out every day and I take care of my body and my mental health first before I think about anyone or anything else. I used to journal before and read books and listen to podcasts, but that was okay. But it didn't really work until I put fitness in with it. That was where it really came together. So my biggest piece of advice, and Mark, I know you mentioned like someone on their beginning of their leadership journey, but no matter where you are in your career, if you're beginning, midway, or at the end, for one, it's never too late to start. The people I look up to, the people who inspire me on a daily basis, are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. And that's when they started. They were older starting, and they're my inspiration. And if you do this, you'll serve everyone so much better in your school community if you put yourself first. Fill your own cup with health and wellness. Food is medicine, movement is medicine. Make a decision to put yourself first for your own sanity. Everything else can wait. And I know what it's like in administration. It's like, I was an assistant principal, so I was like, I'm doing everything by the book to make sure that the principal and we're on good terms and we're not rocking any boats. But there's nothing really urgent, only your health. Imagine getting to the end of your career and now you have to face a lifetime of illness because you didn't put yourself first. What kind of a reward is that? I've done a lot of personal development courses over the past couple of years, and I've read a lot of books as well. So personal development for me is a non-negotiable. I have tons of books up here on my bookshelf. I wish I could show them all to you, but I truly believe if our teachers and administrators were given the opportunity to do personal development instead of professional development all the time, they would grow as a person and be able to offer more to everyone. Offer more to yourself, to your family, to your profession, because you deserve to reach your potential. Personal development coupled with a fitness routine and eating healthy are keys to you reaching your potential. I mean, don't we deserve that? Personal development is important because we deserve to be the best that we can be. But sometimes, again, we carry that guilt. We carry the parent guilt, if you're a parent, the job guilt. We feel that if we put ourselves first, it's wrong, and we feel guilty for it. And I felt guilty for a while, but the guilt is gone now because I've set boundaries. That's something I've learned to do in the past couple of years, is set some real boundaries. The truth is, we need to put the guilt down. And we also come with baggage. We come with a lot of baggage. Just lost my spot. We come with a backpack. You know, when they say leave your baggage by the door, you go to work, leave your problems by the door. Well, that's kind of hard to do because we can't do that unless we work at it. We can't do that unless we deal with our own traumas and issues. And we have generational trauma. We have baggage that affects us even though we haven't figured out what it is. And I like to think of it as bricks in your backpack. And you just got to take them out bit by doing personal development and eating well and doing exercise. Because we have these bricks, and sometimes they're bricks that people put in there from saying things to you or judging you, but you can't let that happen. You just gotta
Oops, sorry
be
everybody.
strong. And,
Hang on.
oops. So personal growth definitely helps with that. Hindsight is 20/20, as they say. And if I were starting over, I would definitely have put my health first. I would have ditched all the excuses and the guilt that I carried, because when it comes to your health, there's truly no excuses. There's some days I just don't feel like working out. I just don't feel like making, cutting up those vegetables or making sure I have food prepped to keep me on track. There's days I don't feel like doing that, but then I say to myself, well, what excuse do I have not doing it? I don't have any excuse. And breaking the cycle of, I guess some people get into the trap of like negative self-talk and that feeling that you're stuck. But what you really need is to find a community of support. And without my community of support that I have, I don't think I would be where I am today. Because your community, it takes a community to raise a child, but it really takes a community to help everybody out. And yeah, that's all I have for you.
Thank you, Jill. That's really, really interesting, and I think that key message where you were saying that it's never too late. I know that you've started your fitness and health and well-being journey in your 50s, so there's time for all of us to get on board. Not always making excuses and attack it. I had a deep dive into your Instagram, and what I found really interesting was there's so much positivity there, and so many different things that you do in your health and fitness journey. It's really worth having a look at for people. And if we've got time a little later on, I might come back to you and ask you how you navigate that space, that social media space, in terms of the positivity and the challenges in that space. But keep that on board, and I'll come back to that down the track. But thank you for sharing your story. We're going to move now to our second speaker for today in our issue of women in leadership. And a couple of our speakers have had their own health challenges in the last few weeks. And I think Councillor Liesbeth Long, the Mayor at Central Goldfields Shire Council, may have had some challenges in that space recently too, but we're so grateful that she's with us today to share her story. So Liesbeth, over to you.
Thank you, Morris. Yeah, you're correct. So I had surgery a week ago. I had my gallbladder taken, And while I was under the surgeon's knife and he was noodling around in my belly, he found a hernia. So he thought, oh, well, while I'm there, I'll just fix that up. And sure enough, I woke up in recovery, in agony, thinking, what did they do in there? Because this was not meant to hurt so much. So long story short, I've literally been on the couch for the past week, gobbling down opioid drugs, and I'm slowly trying to wean myself off them. So I didn't know if I was going to make it today, but I thought, no, I'm going to give it a crack. So, yeah, I'm the Mayor of Central Goldfields Shire. I'm a first-time councillor, so I'm in my 4th year. And a little bit about myself. I was born in the Netherlands. I came to Australia when I was 13 with my family when they decided to immigrate to Australia, and went to Ag College after I finished high school, met my husband, and he was graduating, and we travelled around Australia for a bit, working all over the place, and then ended up in Papua New Guinea as expatriates. Had 3 children along the way, and then 20 years ago we came back to the Central Goldfields to take over the family farm. So it's my husband's farm. We're 5th generation on his side, and I've been farming ever since. And then how I ended up as mayor was a bit of a long-winded story too, I suppose. Our council got sacked in 2017. And when they were sacked, the local committee for Maryborough, so the Chamber of Commerce, went to the state government and said, well, if you're going to sack our council, we want funding to run leadership courses to bring up locals to put up their hand for council. And that was in 2018, and I put my hand up for that. I'd always been in, on committees, and always found myself as either the chair or the president or secretary or in some sort of leadership position, never really thought anything of it. I put my hand up for leading excellence, it was called, and walked in the door on the very first day and thought, oh my God, I found my tribe. Like, these people really resonate with me. And the course was heavily focused on local government and becoming a councillor. And I thought, yeah, nah, who's going to do that? That's not for me, no way. Why would you ever do that? That is such a stupid idea. So, but really enjoyed the leadership course. And the following year I turned 50 and decided to take a gap year and go back to Europe. I'd never been back to the Netherlands since I'd left as a 13-year-old. And my children, they were old enough for me to go back. And I sort of had a few reasons to go back. I wanted to reconnect with my Dutch heritage, and I wanted to sort of find out where I belonged, whether I should be living in the Netherlands or Australia. I mean, it was sort of not against my wishes, but I didn't really have a choice to move to Australia. And then I decided to walk the Camino de Santiago. I don't know if some of you know that. I know, Mark, you've walked it as well. It's an 800-kilometre pilgrimage across the top of Spain. And I walked that with myself, not by myself, with myself. There is a difference. And I had a bit of an epiphany while I did that, because while I was trying to work out where I belonged, and I vividly remember in the first week, it was a 40-degree heat wave, and I'm on a little dusty track going to see some wonderful church that everyone had recommended, and I was dying of the thirst because I'd run out of water. And then it just hit me out of the blue that I am in fact an Australian and I belong in Australia. So that sort of cemented the idea that I'm going back to Aussie and that's where I belong. And then so I had my 3 months in Europe, absolutely loved it. And then when I got back to Australia, I started thinking that, well, if I am an Australian, then I belong here. I want to make the place I live in the best it can be. And it was an election year the following year, 2020. So I decided to put my hand up for council. And I did have an opponent, but as it ended up, I had a 69 first preference majority vote and became a councillor. And I was like, oh, now what? I sort of didn't really to be voted in. I just went as this is who I am. I'm a farmer and, I want to work hard for my community. So became a councillor, and that's when Mark sort of crossed my path. Our children, while they were at high school, they all attended Energy Breakthrough, which is, of course, the local event, biggest local event in our Shire. That's CEP. We're partners with CEP. And I'd been really involved with the school. And when I found out that one of the councillors actually sits on the committee, my arm shot up in briefing and I said, I want to be on that committee. So joined up with Energy Breakthrough and have been on the committee ever since, and absolutely loved it, seeing it from a completely different sort of viewpoint instead of seeing it as a parent and, feeding children and all that. All of a sudden I was thrust into the view of risk and policies and, making budgets balance. So that was a really interesting contrast to see it from the other side. And then year before last, I thought, no, I'm going to have a crack at being the mayor. I always find that I grow the most when I put myself out of my comfort zone. And I'll tell you what, being the mayor is definitely out of my comfort zone, but I've loved every minute. I didn't get in the first year, but last year I put my hand up again and I got in. My fellow councillors voted me, and I'm super grateful that they had the confidence in me as a first-term councillor to be, you know, the leader of the pack as such. Our 7 councillors, they vote for the mayor, so you basically pick your team captain, I suppose. And I was really, really proud that, you know, they felt that I was worthy of that position. So I totally echo Jill's sentiments when people ask me what it's like to be mayor and, you know, what do you do and how do you cope. My number one is always my self-care has come even more to the forefront. It always has been. I've always been active and gone for bike rides and walks, but since I've become the mayor, it is absolutely a non-negotiable. I go for a bike ride every morning. I go for 19 Ks just out of town. It's a bit less than an hour, but what I like about it, it's an actual, you know, hour with wardrobe changes. So I can get in and out of my cycling gear, go for my ride, get back, get changed, and that's an exact hour. So, and it is a non-negotiable. It's the first thing I do. I get up, I get changed, I go for my bike ride. I go with myself. My phone doesn't come. And the way I actually see it, I see it as a gift to myself. I gift myself an hour a day to just enjoy my bike ride and enjoy thinking time. And I write my speeches on my bike. I play out difficult conversations on the phone or emails I need to write. That all happens in that 1 hour on my bike in the morning. And as soon as I get home, I have brekkie, get changed, and then I'm in my office. And, you know, it just all happens in that 1 hour. So if I don't go, and I haven't gone for a couple of weeks because I've been on the couch, and by geez, I've missed it. I've really, really missed it. And it might be a bit hard going back next Monday, but I'll be on the bike. No worries whatsoever, because it's just such an important part of my day. And the other thing I do is I bought a really flash watch. I bought a Garmin watch, and that measures all sorts of biometrics, but that's given me a bit of data on how I am coping with stressful situations and, you know, how I'm sleeping. I really value my sleep. And my husband, he's a bit of a snorer. So the last couple of months, I've actually started sleeping in the spare room, because I said to him, babe, I can't do what I need to do sleeping next to you because you are just too bloody noisy. So we both don't like it, but I just know that I can't perform in my position if I don't get enough rest. And, you know, and then the eating well, I think that all goes hand in hand anyway. If you're mindful of being healthy and exercising, I think the diet sort of flows along with that. I still enjoy treats, and I love my gin. So I love a couple of drinks of red wine on the weekend. I don't deny myself anything, but I do feel that self-care is such an important thing. If you're in a leadership role that's stressful, or any leadership role, you really need to look after yourself, or you're just not able to do it. You might be able to do it for a little while, but then again, you know, you do get burnt out, and then that's the end of it. So I want this to be sustainable for me. I want to be able to do this for, you know, a few years. I hope I'll run again this year during the election, and if I get voted in again, that'd be absolutely fantastic. So yeah, so that's a little bit about myself. The other story I'd like to tell you, I'm actually dyslexic, and this is a story I shared with Mark a couple of years ago. And for 20 years, I actually worked in a supermarket because I physically believed I wasn't capable of doing anything more than that. Every single teacher I've ever had in my school life has told me that I was stupid and dumb, and that, you know, you should know this by now. And I'm like, but I don't understand. And, you know, going to school in the 70s, I think dyslexia wasn't understood very well at all, and people just didn't know what it was. So I had to repeat the 2nd grade, and, you know, absolutely humiliating to have to do that, lose all my friends. But then the worst thing was when I came out to Australia, and of course I didn't speak any English, so had to learn a new language. And then I was at a special English school, and finally halfway through year 8 I managed to go to regular high school. And a particular teacher, a maths teacher, I remember her to this day. I can see her clear as a bell. Her name was Mrs. Peddleston, and what I wouldn't love to have a chat to her now, because she found it very entertaining to stick me at the front of this classroom and make me spell out mathematical terms. And I just couldn't do it. I can't spell for the life of me, but to be able, you know, to do that in front of classmates. It was so awful and so horrendous, and I still don't for the life of me why anyone would want to be in a teaching position if you get your jollies off doing things like that, humiliating students. But, you know, look at me now. I'm the Mayor of Central Goldfields Shire, and yeah, I think I've done well for myself, and I'm super proud what I've achieved in my short years. And yeah, to anyone listening out there, give leadership a go. You learn so much. You learn so much about yourself, and yeah, that's got to be a good thing. So yeah, that's probably enough from me. Open for questions, and thank you.
Thanks, Liesbeth. That was fantastic, and that last story about overcoming adversity and it must have had a huge impact at the time. But that resilience to keep going and to fight through and to get where you are and is absolutely fantastic. And you know, and just quickly, I think you've got quite a strong connection to a couple of schools still right now as part of your work or your involvement with the community. Is that correct?
Sort of a little bit. I was chair of Highview College, which is an independent school, and I was also on the local primary school, Timewell Primary School, school council or board, whatever it was called. But Highview College was the first board I'd ever joined, and I was actually their first female chair. So that happened after only a couple of years of being on the board, and that really gave me a strong foundation for governance and leadership, I guess. At the time, I didn't really know what I was getting myself in for, but you know, governance is governance, whether you're a mayor of a council or a chair of a board or anything like that. It's all the same. Governance is governance. So you know, yeah, start off small and work your way up. It's all the same. So, but yeah, I'm very passionate about our local schools. Timewell Primary School celebrated 150 years last year, and you know, my children went there, my husband went there, my father-in-law went there. So you know, there's 3 generations just like that. And small community schools, I remember when I was on the council of Timewell, I did go to a CEP session with other people, and it was in Halls Gap years and years ago, and I still remember that too. So the work CEP does is just amazing, and even though I'm not sort of in education myself as such, I have a diploma in early childhood education and care, and I do a bit of relief work, but since I've become mayor that hasn't happened. I haven't had the time for that. So yeah, but little schools, they're just amazing.
Yeah, and just quickly, Elizabeth, you were talking about your challenges, I guess, at school. In the benefit of hindsight, is there any advice that you would have given yourself if you could go back and talk to your 12-year-old self now with what you were going through at that time that would have supported or helped at that time?
I'd probably give myself the biggest hug and say, look, don't worry about it. These people don't know nothing. You know, Lord, forgive them because they know not what they do. But it was hard, and it's even hard still now. So with council, we get an agenda every week, and it's about 300 pages of written words. And I mean, obviously I can read, but it takes me a long time. So every Sunday I'm in my office for 3 or 4 hours reading papers, and I'll give you the tip. Some of them are pretty bloody dry. You know, they put you to sleep at the best of times, let alone when you're taking a long time. But then, you know, council, they came through as well, because we were doing our accessibility policy not long after I was elected, and one of the general managers came up to me and said, well, Liesbeth, you're dyslexic, how do you go with reading? And I said, well, you know, it's really hard for me. And then the governance officer actually took it upon herself to research different fonts, and she found this font called Comic Sans, which is very favourable for dyslexics. So, and I now get all my papers in Comic Sans on a sepia background, especially for me, so that I can, well, and other people who obviously have accessibility issues. But I just thought that was the sweetest thing that they did that for me. And, you know, and since then they've actually had feedback, because our agendas go on our council website, and people have given feedback to council saying how nice it is to have accessible papers that they can find it easier to read. So yeah, if only that happened, you know, 40 years ago when I started school. I always say to myself, I was born too soon. I should be born, 10 years ago, because now they're all over dyslexia. But I see my dyslexia as an absolute gift. I look outside of the square, my brain is completely wired differently. So when it comes to problem solving and, seeing things differently, I can just see them. And so I see it as a superpower. I really do. And, there's the LinkedIn, they've got hashtag made by dyslexia. And I really see myself as one of those. I am made by dyslexia. So, yeah.
Love it. Love that attitude. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think we all can relate to some of that, and it's fantastic, the resilience there and that positivity that you reflect. It's absolutely wonderful, and so thank you. And so we move on to our third speaker, someone else who may have had a few little health challenges recently, and we're going out to Dimboola Memorial Secondary College, where Sally Klinge is the principal, and she's going to join us now. Had the benefit of going out to Dimboola a few weeks ago and getting a great tour of the school. So thank you very much, Sally. And I'd like to welcome you to join us today, and thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, thanks, Morris. Hope you can all hear me. Had a few internet issues. I'm actually at home because I'm still on COVID isolation, so I hope you can hear me. Typical teacher, I made a short PowerPoint. I just thought it was easier to talk to that and better than looking at me. So if you're happy to move the slide on. Thanks, Maddie. I'll keep talking. About me, well, I'm going to call it as it is. I actually started teaching in 1981, so I am not young anymore, sadly. And a little bit about my background. I'm from Melbourne and was at uni for 5 years and had 24 hours to shift my life from Melbourne to Dimboola. And when I arrived at 5 p.m. on a day of 45-degree heat, I had nowhere to stay and was told, you've got the pub or you've got the caravan park. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And I hadn't ever been to Dimboola, but that was how things were back then. If you're happy to move the slide on, please. My background, I've taught in 2 small rural secondary schools in the Wimmera Mallee, a very large metropolitan school. I was sent to the bush to teach. I went back to Melbourne and loved it. A very, very big school in Melbourne. And loved it. But in the interim, I met my husband on the tennis court, as you do, and came back to the Wimmera. And people probably thought, is this person for real? Because I suddenly wanted to come back. And I did miss the country. Being a city slicker, I came here and it was not easy. And then, I decided I think I missed the life. And we've had 4 children. And I've taught in 3 small rural primary schools as well, government and primary. So loved teaching, but family was also a bit of a passion, sort of, I just made the choice, I suppose. So that's a little bit about me. If you're happy to move the slide on, please. And this is where I'm at the moment. This is our beautiful school, Dimboola Memorial Secondary College. I think we're pretty lucky to have a wonderful space like that. We actually celebrated our centenary just over a week ago, and that's where I got COVID, as did I think a lot of other people, sadly, in our local area. It's a wonderful school. I've been very passionate about it, perhaps to a fault, because I've taught in other schools, which I think is a massive bonus. I think that's something I think it's a good thing to do if you're going to be in a leadership role, to see how other places work. But that's where our 4 children attended. That's where my husband went to school. So it's a pretty important part of our lives. If you're happy to move on to the slide, thanks. So the key messages for me, something that I've learnt, probably, which is not on the slide, I actually did have it there. One of the biggest things is to be brave, which is what I think was said by Jill earlier on, and you have to take risks. And one of the other things that I found when you're going out on the leadership journey is you do need to listen, and you need to listen with purpose. Everyone has a story, and we often as humans become a little bit judgmental and, oh yeah, that can't be right or whatever. There's a reason behind every person's actions and what they do. And we need to show a bit of empathy and compassion. but also by the same token, we have to model what our values and beliefs are, and we have to stick by them. And if you're feeling that the position that you're in, wherever you may be, doesn't perhaps fit well with you, then maybe that's not the right place for you. And when I went for the principal's job after I did it later in life, a lot later in life, I thought, well, I'll never know if I don't have a go. It was something that I'd always wanted to do, but family had probably taken precedence over everything. And I was incredibly passionate about sport, and that was my life for many, many, many years. And that was by choice. And someone said to me, a very, very good friend, on the day of the interview, she said, be yourself. If you're not yourself and they don't like who you are, then you're not meant for the job. Because you can't be someone you're not when you're in a role, because being false comes out pretty quickly. But the other key is I have a love of learning, and I believe that we can learn from others, and we always seek advice. We can't have all the answers. We don't know all the answers, which is why you should never act in haste. That's another big takeaway that I've learned in my time in leadership. You need to take time to consider. You'll get some people, and not being in education, you'll get some people who, it could be parents, it could be staff, it could be students, and they all come with their agendas, and some of them can be fairly agitated at the time. But it's really important to take breath, take stock, and go back. Always know, people need to know that you will definitely come back and follow up, but you need to be able to weigh up all the options of what's happened and get your facts straight. That's one thing. And the other thing, adopting a positive mindset, which I think both Jill and Liesbeth have both referred to, that's really key. And I agree with both of them. I think having time for yourself, that's what I do in the morning as well. I get up and I have a routine, and that's my me time. And I know a lot of other principals do the same thing. Some of them walk in the dark. I don't want to do that because I'm on a farm and I'll step in a pothole and probably do my knee or my ankle. So I got the old exercise bike. I figured that's a safer option, and I really strongly recommend doing that. That time to yourself is really important. Could you please go to the next slide? Thanks. The other thing is a couple of things I've jotted down here. Change is a good thing, I think. A lot of people, for some reason, they say, why change something if it isn't broke or something like that, or broken? But change, we live in such a fluid society now, especially since COVID. If there wasn't change, well, we sure as eggs had it then. And that's when I started my principal's job, bang, when COVID started. And I'm thinking, my God, what have I got myself into? But you roll with the punches, you go with the flow, and you learn as we all learn and grow together. And I see change as a bonus. I'm a strong believer in listening to, we've got a lot of younger staff, some of whom I've taught myself, and one of whom is actually my daughter. All three of my daughters are teachers, and one of them is actually on our staff and would be probably one of my harshest critics, as would one of my other daughters. So they certainly tell me straight. But I like to hear young people's ideas, because they've often got a different way of looking at things, and we've adopted some great practices at school because of it's probably streamlining things and making the job less time consuming. It's about working smarter and listening to others. I've learnt with them, and that's really helped, I think, our staff. It's helped me. I've had to learn how to do it all too, like computers, etc. Hopefully, Morris, you didn't find too much on me, because social media is one of my boundaries. I do set boundaries, and social media is a no for me for a number of reasons, but it's a choice that I like to live with.
Sally, I went looking and I found nothing. So you're leading, practicing what you preach, which is great.
Thank you, because that's something that I do value, my own personal space, and that's nice to know. The other thing to remember is no issue is unsolvable, and that's where you lean on others who've had experience. It doesn't matter how young or old they may be. Everyone's got something to offer, and use those around you to help you, and never be afraid to ask. I've always been an asker of questions, and sometimes it might be something that's fairly obvious, and I've always been someone who says it as it is, and that's probably got me into trouble sometimes, but I'd rather be honest. It's It's what you need to be, as long as it is also respectful. Obviously, you don't have to be insulting, but you just try and be honest. And especially I found in my dealings with parents, that's what they like. They want to hear the truth. And I have found that it has stood me in good stead. The thing to also remember, and I'm clearly talking from a school perspective here, is that everything we do is about the students. If it wasn't for the students, we wouldn't have the job. And so we really need to listen to our students and hear what they are suggesting or asking or telling us. There's various ways we can obviously do that, but that's the thing when you have perhaps some issues that arise. It might be conflict, it might be staff. You need to make sure that everyone remembers this is about the students. And obviously, when you allude to staff in a school setting, and it would happen with Shire and everywhere else, you have to build people's capacity, the staff capacity as well, because you've also got to make sure that you're bringing them along the journey with you, whatever the direction is that you're headed in. You have to empower them to be skilled, to be able to do whatever tasks you ask them to do. Everybody has a role. I'm a great believer in distributed leadership. I don't believe that there's always a captain of the ship, so to speak, but you do need to, I think you need to empower others, and then you've got a succession plan happening, which I think has never been more crucial in education than it is at the moment. And maybe with the benefit of hindsight, maybe I could have taken more opportunities when I was younger, which is something I think I've got on the next slide, but I think it's really important to build everybody's capacity, and everyone has their positives, everyone has their talents, and trying to find them and build on those is what I've always tried to do. And exactly what the two girls before me were saying, take time for yourself and your family. And that's paramount in anything. It doesn't matter what role you're in, whether you be a teacher, a farmer, or whatever. I just think that that's really key. And finding like-minded people, which I think Jill alluded to before, that's something that I found when I became a principal. I thought, where have these people been all my life? I just thought, I'm finding you guys now. And I just felt I was really enjoying being with the people that I was with and learning along the way. And I think it's just so important. And the other thing that's really important, I think, Liesbeth, you mentioned about rest and sleep. And one of the things, I mean, I'm an older person and I told some of the younger staff, there are times when you toss and turn at night, let's be honest. I think any job would have that. But I have found that if I get up and physically write down with the good old-fashioned pen, not on a computer, not on my phone, I never have my phone near me at night, and I get up and I write down what it is that's on my mind. It might be things I need to do. I write it down, and then sometimes, I'll be honest, I've had to get up 2 or 3 times. But once I've written them down, I can go to sleep. Now, look, that works for me. And everybody knows you need your rest to be able to operate on all 4 or 5 cylinders, however many you operate on. But it's really important that you are happy and healthy. And people pick up on that at the drop of a hat. And one of the reasons I still do what I do is because I genuinely love being with the kids. I love learning. And I do it wherever I was. I taught when I went on a German exchange when I was a supervising teacher. I taught students over in Germany, and I thought, you know what, they're no different over there than they are here. It's exactly the same. Kids are kids, and I just loved it, and it just made me feel alive, and that's why I still do what I do. If you're happy to move on, because I'm conscious of the time, thanks. So hindsight is a wonderful thing. You could say perhaps I may have started my career earlier. I came from the era when I had our first child. My time with family leave was up, and I was told come back full time or resign. And it was quite a distance that I had to drive, and I decided I didn't want to do the travel, so I actually had to resign my position, resign from the Department of Education. That was a choice I made because back then I don't think the options were as flexible as they are now. I'm really pleased to see that the Department of Education, or that just education in general, has moved, what I believe, with the times. I know we have a lot of part-time staff. It can cause headaches, but I know people want to continue their careers, and some of them are wonderful practitioners, and you want to make every opportunity available to them. But look, that's a choice I made, and so that put me back a bit. So I do wonder whether I could have taken on a leadership role earlier with 4 children. I found that a bit challenging. You do need the support of your partner. If you've got a partner, if you're on your own, well, you're cruising. But I just wonder, maybe I could have done that differently. But look, that's the history now, and I move on. And you take PD opportunities, whatever comes available to you, seize the moment, and have a go. And the bottom line is, though, I've always been a strong believer in this: you follow your heart, because that's where it will take you in the right direction. And sometimes you might think, well, I'm not so sure, but that's what, Jill, you did. You followed your heart. You had a light bulb moment. So too Liesbeth. She knew that she wanted to challenge herself, and challenge herself she did. And I put myself out of a comfort zone, I suppose, because I was an older person when I became a principal. Some people give me a bit of a razz about that, but I've got a thick hide and I can wear it. And never give up on some of the dreams that you might have. For example, another thing I can't believe, when Elizabeth said the Camino de Santiago trail, that's on my bucket list. So I just think I hear things from the 2 girls who've spoken before me, and they're the exact same sentiments that I've got. And there's always time, but as Jill said, you've got to have your health. So that's key. So whatever sort of situation you're in your leadership journey, be sure to look out for yourself, and never be too proud to lean on others, and make sure that you do take time to smell the roses and enjoy the environment, because the environment is a wonderful healer too. And I don't know that I've really got anything more to say, and I'm conscious of the time. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Sally, thank you so much. I think, as you alluded to at the end, there's a theme underlying all of what our speakers spoke about today, about that resilience, that looking after yourself, and not just saying that you're going to look after yourself, but actually having a plan, how you do that, and how you focus on the positivity, and you look at the people around you and how that can support you and stuff. So I just want to say thank you so much to Jill, Sally and Liesbeth for joining us today. I don't want to single anyone out, but particularly Jill, who's stayed up really late or early hours of the morning to stay with us. And I was watching her carefully, and she wasn't nodding off. She was totally focused on the conversation. I think we could have a much longer conversation, and I think we'll revisit this theme and topic and broader down the track. But again, from all of us here at CEP and the people who are joining us today, we'd like to thank all 3 of you for joining us. And on that note, I think we're nearly close to time, so I'll just hand it back to Brendan.
Thanks very much, Morris. Can I also thank our speakers today? The presentations were terrific. I'll remind you that the survey for today's session is in the chat box. So please complete that survey before signing off today. As I said, today's session has been recorded, so it will be available online. Now, next week, we have the second session in the winter series, and I'll remind everybody that the starting time next week is back to the 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Time slot, and the topic next week is addressing workload for school leaders, particularly important issue, and I think it's very much a follow-on from today's session. There will be a panel of speakers. A number of the school associations, secondary primary associations, will have speakers delivering at that session next week. So I would really encourage people to enrol for next week's session. Thank you, everybody, for your participation today. That's the end of today's session. Bye for now.